Good morning, good evening, good day, good night, wherever you are in the world. I am Tim, back once again for the Speed Force Racing GP2 Series Spanish Grand Prix. Just now waiting for the qualifying session to start, waiting for the first driver to blink to go out on track. Looking like we're going to have 17 drivers racing with us today. I will have a co-commentator here in just a few moments' time. Martin is scheduled to join me here in just a moment, but waiting for him to get everything situated, then finally we will have us a co-com. But for now, looks like some driver has decided that it is time to go out and start his first flying lap. Which driver is it? Waiting to see who is on the out lap. It is the Slayer down there. So the Slayer in the Alfa Romeo, the first driver out on track, an Alpine of Para as well. And now here is Martin finally joining us. So Martin, you have not missed a thing. Qualifying literally has just started. No driver has even set a flying lap yet. Hopefully you can hear us actually, because Martin, if you're saying anything, we can't hear you.
No, I've not spoken yet. Hello.
Ah, there we go. Now we got you.
How are you doing?
Doing fine. Just watching the qualifying, or, well, what's about to be the qualifying anyway. The Slayer going to be the first driver to lay a flying lap down.
I'm just loading back into the session because I hit join session instead of spectate.
Well, Martin, I mean, we only have 17 drivers out there. If you really wanted to race with them, then you can probably strap a helmet on and go out there.
I'll commentate while I'm racing.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't work for me. I don't know about anyone else. So the Slayer, the first driver taking his lap now. We'll ride on board with him, go around a lap this track in Barcelona. A very fun turns 1 and 2 for me personally. If you can just really hug those curves, it's so satisfying that you have to set yourself up for a good run up the hill with a good exit out of 2.
Yeah, turn 3 is very tricky. A lot of people lose it there in this new game. It's very, very tricky. The front tyres, especially in the race, the front tyre pressures have to be right. And if you overheat your front tyres going through there, you just automatically spin.
Now we're at the end of the second sector. Through the DRS zone, you'll see some overtakes here. Now the third and final sector of the race course. If you don't get the overtake done in the last DRS zone, there's another one coming up on the front straightaway. Might be able to squeeze an overtake into this tiny little chicane, but that's only for the most opportunistic of drivers. Out of the final corner, here's your DRS. You heard the beep, and as the Slayer crosses the line, a 118.054. Gineji and the Aston Martin also on a lap. Through the first sector now. And while qualifying is underway and we let these drivers figure out where they're going to start on the grid, we'll go ahead and update you on our point standings. So the GP2 division, it sees Ray Turner in the lead with 112 points to MDJ's 81 points. Now that is after Ray Turner was able to score 4 points in Miami, MDJ not scoring any. Second place driver in Miami, Calvin, is P3 with 79 points. And of course, Ray Turner and Calvin are really the two drivers that you have to keep your eye on this season because they're going to be shooting for that constructor standings. We know that Haas is, would you say, legendary, Martin, in Speed Force
SFR?
racing?
Yeah,
yes,
they have become so. Yeah, they're extremely dominant pairing, I would say, kind of like the Mercedes in the hybrid area in real Formula 1. That's kind of what they've become in SFR. They didn't race together last season in the Haas, but the season before, both Calvin and Rage Hunter, I think they raced to either the last race of the season or the second last race of the season. They fought each other for the championship. And they were completely dominant in the constructors, and it's kind of going that way so far this season. It looks as if they're going to be very difficult to stop.
It really does. And looking at the constructors, 191 points belonging to Haas. They are on the top spot of the board so far, with Aston Martin P2, P3 belonging to Alpine. Now, Haas and Aston Martin, well, that is a very big gap that Aston Martin's going to have to overcome. 191 points to 108 points. Can't quite do the math right now, but that is just over 80 points if the math is correct in my head, and, well, it usually never is. Watching Mansell, though, in the Williams right now, about to complete his first flying lap.
So, Jimmy straight away, 17.2 is cleared from everybody by 8 tenths at the moment. That's a fantastic lap time.
Yeah, Jime really is looking quick there. We saw him go to the top spot of the board, but bringing attention to that gap really is impressive. And, you know, you see him still out there, but it doesn't look like he's going to be bringing his lap time down this time around. In fact, yeah, he's just going into the pits. But still, a 1:17.2, and now Dye setting a 1:17.8. So a few drivers starting to get closer. Go ahead and take a look at Para in the Alpine. Xander on his out lap, but here is Para in the Alpine on his first flying lap. So we saw Para go out earlier on track. Apparently there was an issue, and he must have invalidated his time. So hopefully he does not do that this time, as we have a yellow flag in Sector 2. Looks like it's just some cars letting other drivers by, but Para might get held up by the McLaren here. The McLaren actually goes off track. Para very close to him, but is able to avoid the McLaren. I think that was Xander.
Track limits there, they just managed to keep it in.
I mean, the McLaren definitely made sure he got out of the way of the drivers qualifying. You can't deny that. Down the front straightaway.
Para just shown there, he wasn't able to go all flat out through that final corner. The final corner is really tricky on traction this year. It used to be able to short shift and go through flat out, no problem, but you really need to be careful this year.
So Martin, walk us through a driver's mindset entering this race. You know, what's on their mind when it comes to tire strategies? Is actually, we see an Aston Martin spun around there in the first sector, but you know, what is the ideal tire strategy going into this race, and overall, you know, what are you looking for? Are you going to be conserving tires, or is this a track that really just eats them and there's no conserving?
I think with this game now, it's all about tyre temperature. That's the number one thing. You know, it's a little bit different for people that use different assist levels. Maybe if you're running a full traction or a medium traction, you can get away with it a little bit more. But for your, you know, more quicker drivers that aren't using assist, tyre temperatures is the number one priority. So you would see most people around a track like this will be running very close to minimum pressures. You kind of want your tyre range to be around 90 degrees or the very high 80s at most. But I think medium hard is probably the preferred strategy. You do have people that will try the reverse and go the hard tyre at the beginning and extend the stint and go for the reverse strategy. But you do have the risk of, if there's an early safety car, you have to stay out and you kind of lose a pit stop. So it is interesting. You know, people that start at the back. I know that Matty, he likes to do a reverse strategy every now and then. But I think the guys that start up front will be conservative and they'll just go medium hard. That's if we're having a dry race. I don't actually know what the race conditions are.
Yeah, and you know, it's almost like it'd be wonderful if the commentators and the spectators were able to know what the weather forecast was, but sadly that is not in our control. But, you know, going back on tire pressures, it's a lot easier this season for drivers to figure that out, though, isn't it, Martin? Because last season, the drivers were limited to whatever tire compound that they qualified on. They had to start on if they qualified in the top 10.
Right.
But now they are allowed to choose from whatever compound they wish.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's pretty much a given at most tracks now. You just run as close to minimum pressures, um, pretty much minimum pressure or a couple of clicks up from it. But as you say, strategies kind of fell away in the game now because of qualifying. They've took away the people that you would try and qualify in the medium tyre. So that's kind of, I'm a bit disappointed with that, but it is what it is, I guess. It would be good also if they had an extra medium tyre in the race, because there's not really much options for strategies. It's pretty much the straightforward strategy or the reverse strategy, and there's not really. You used to have people that would maybe try a two-stop strategy in a race, like a race like this last season. You would have the medium hard, or the soft hard, or the soft medium medium. That's kind of now been took away. So it's really just medium hard to hard medium. So yeah, it's definitely different and a lot easier and straightforward now, which I think has actually been the EA Sports' purpose. I think they've tried to make the game easier this year, but it does take it away from people like us that are into racing in a more serious way. It kind of takes it away a bit, the enjoyment.
You see, it's funny you say that, though, because I am actually on the side that, you know, as a driver, I would rather just be able to choose the tire compounds entering the race, just because it takes a little bit of stress off of choosing the strategy. And, you know, when you're the one making those decisions, obviously you don't want to you don't want to put any more pressure on yourself than you already are. So
yeah, and it takes away the inconsistency of, well, we don't have Jeff anymore, do we? But Jeff was never accurate on tyre strategies either, or pit stop windows. And many people would suffer the glitch of getting into the pits and being put on the wrong tyre as well. That kind of all went away. It's not Jamie. Is he doing a second run now, Jamie? Had an issue by the looks of it.
Going actually into the pits as Para goes quickest now, a 1:17.2 for the Alpine driver.
That's very close.
So the other Alpine, Cabrin Khan out on track. So we'll see if he has anything for his teammate. It's a 1:17.9 so far is his best lap.
Which is not a bad time at all.
P5 so far, and P5 within the last 5 minutes of qualifying. Now, obviously, we do expect most of these drivers to go out for at least one more lap. So we would imagine these times to get down there at least a little bit closer to the 1:17.2s. But the big question is, can anyone beat the 1:17.2s?
So it's a very quick time to try and match.
So just looking at the difference, though, it's a 1:17.292 for Para, and then it's a 2:94 for Jime. 2/1000ths of a second separating first and second at the moment. And, you know, that's the time that these drivers are going to have to beat. And we've got two drivers that are really close to that time, and then everyone else just lagging behind. Calvin in P3, 1:17.7.
2000s, to put that in perspective, I think that might be. I think that 2000ths of a second, maybe a blink of an eye, is that probably how close that is in lap time. Just strictly the blink of an eye, that's how close they are.
So you saw KXI.
Might take longer than that.
So we just saw KXI go off track there in, I believe it's turn 8. So KXI really struggling in that Red Bull, but now watching Cassidy in the Alfa Romeo, a 1:18.0 is his best lap time. He goes into the pits. The Slayer on track, 1:18.054 is his best lap. Does he stay out on track? Yes, he does. So this is going to be what likely will be his final flying lap unless he wants to stay out one more time. Crosses the line, no improvement though, a 1:18.054 for the Slayer.
Oh, I think he's made a mistake at the beginning of his lap, Tim, and he kind of let off, and this is him now going on his push lap.
All right, so the Slayer going to give it one more go. So
yeah, he's really pushing the...
So every driver has had the opportunity to set a qualifying time. However, Xander down there, the banker lap of all banker laps, a 1:34. So we hope to see him get a quicker time. We'll go ahead and take a look at him.
Yeah, good to see
Oh,
Xander
and he spins
back.
actually. Well, it's good to see him, but not stuck the wrong way in the grass.
Yes. And MDJ has moved himself up into third place. A good lap. So I am on board with the Slayer. He has 2 tenths up as he's coming in through the third sector.
Let's see what he's going to be able to do. One more corner to go. Looks like he's kept it within the track limits. He'll open the DRS for a little bit of advantage before he crosses the line. It's P7, a 117.957.
Competitive, good to see Slayer getting himself up there now. Had a slow start to the season uncharacteristically for him.
So a lot of drivers going out on track now for their final laps. Just barely going to be making it back around track in time. It's pretty much like someone opened up the floodgates when you when you were driving down the front straightaway there. Oh my goodness!
Like
And
the front two are just following each other. Looks like Pera is trying to get in the slipstream.
Oh, and Pera goes off track a little bit there.
Yeah, getting out of the way of the car behind.
So it looks like it is clear behind Pera now, and it's going to be clear ahead as well. Oh, and MDJ, he has retired from the session. Not sure if that is a wreck on track or if it was in the pits. All the same, it's going to be at least P3 for him.
So Calvin is 4 tenths up on his time. This could be close to pole position as he's coming through the third sector. If we can just hook this little section up here with the chicane. Nice and neat, makes no mistakes.
P3 for Calvin.
Not far away. It's a terrific lap.
So Jime and Pera, the two fastest qualifiers, they are on their final laps of the qualifying. 2 1/1000ths of a second separating these two drivers so far. Well, we're going to see if either of them can get an even better time.
We also have the other Haas of Rage Hunter now, Tim. He's coming through the final chicane. Is he going to be able to get himself up there? (17.7) P7.
Jime going through the final chicane now. Let's see what he's able to do. As he crosses the line, it is a 117.0 for Jime, and Pera is off track.
That's abandoned, yeah.
Oh, Pera's not just off track. He doesn't have a front wing, so needless to say, he is not going to be improving his lap, and it looks like Jime will be our pole sitter. Looks like, yes, what you see is what you're going to get. No one has anything for Jime, a 117.0.
It's a fantastic lap.
So I'm starting to think that a lot of drivers are going to be racing for second today, but that's assuming that Jime is able to get a good start. If he bottles the start, then it's all for naught.
Yeah, the front two seem to have really... having said that, Calvin has kind of closed the gap up now. It looks as if there's going to be a mighty battle going on for the podium as you look from, P2 down to... way down to P14. There's not even a second between them, so yeah, I think this is going to be a very close race.
And your official starting lineup for the Speed Force Racing GP2 Series Spanish Grand Prix: Jaime on the pole, Para in second, third is Calvin Racing, Cassidy in fourth, KXI in fifth, Janeji in sixth, Dye in seventh, Rage Hunter in eighth, MDJ in ninth, Mansell in 10th, I'm Just in Time in 11th, The Slayer in 12th, 13th is Capricorn, Sonic Hawk in 14th, Train Game Wow in 15th, 16th is Maddie, and Xander in the 17th position did not get a better lap time than the 1:34, so he's going to have to go from the back to the front. Just waiting to load into the F1 paddock, and then we will be able to start racing. A Williams going to be leading them off. And when was the last time you could say that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm actually looking through the grid there, and I'm really impressed with Sonic Hawk getting, the 1:18.0. He's not far off the main field on his quality pace, because he has not been around for what feels a long time. I think he's only raced one or two races at the beginning of the season, and then he's not really been playing the game since then, and he's only just returning. So returning and being able to pretty much get back on it again is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and him being in 14th, it really does not do that lap time justice, because you said it right,
No.
Martin, is that with the exception of Jaime and him being in the 1:17.0s, Sonic Hawk is within a second of everyone else. And that is
Yeah,
very impressive for a driver that, again, like you said, only races on occasion now.
and it's like it is that tight in the midfield that I saw Cassidy improved his final run by only a couple of tenths, and he moved from outside the top 10 right up to P4. So that's how tight it is in the midfield. I really think that we're going to see a really good battle going on for the podium today.
And speaking of that, Martin, I think it's time that we get our top three predictions in. And in any particular order, I'm going to have to go, well, with a couple of obvious choices. Jaime and Para seem to be very strong up there in the top two. And then beyond
Yeah.
that, you say that Calvin's looking good, but I'm going to have to, I'll be honest, I'm going to have to go with the other Alpine of Capricorn.
Okay, very brave. um, oh, I don't know. It's a difficult one. I think if Jaime gets away off the line, okay, and has no issues, he could push on. I know that Calvin and Pera have been racing each other all season long. They've been having some epic battles, and are they going to be able to keep it clean throughout the whole race? I think Cassidy's there to capitalise on any mistakes. Gennady, I know that he will be going for it straight off the bat at the beginning. MDJ this season has had fantastic race pace, a lot quicker than his qualifying pace. I don't want to give the commentators cuss, but I expect MDJ to be up there fighting for the podium at some point in the race. I really do. Let's have a look and see strategy to go with. And as you can see, pretty much everybody in the top 10 winning the entire thing.
Yeah, and you pretty much called it, Martin. Looking like it is going to be a medium to hard strategy for those top 10 runners. And, I know it really was brave of me to choose Capricorn because of him running in the 13th position, but I just wanted to mix it up a little bit, because most of the time I'm choosing from the top 5, top 6, and I'm like, nah, let's go for someone.
He has went very aggressive because he is starting on the soft tyre.
And
he's looking to climb up very quickly.
Yeah, and that is one of the first things that I noticed. However, I don't know if you've noticed this, or maybe it's just all in my head, but it seems as though the soft tire this year does not give the drivers as much of a benefit as you would think it should.
No, definitely not, no. And it doesn't seem to matter what track, you get very, very limited life in them. And even when you're going round, the pace falls out of them so quickly. So I'm not a fan of the soft tyres for anything other than qualifying, to be honest. But maybe they know something we don't. Maybe they've been doing some practice and they feel that they can nurse the tyres better. the hard tyres can go a long distance in the race, so you know Cabernicon could be thinking, you know, let's get a good start, come in for the hard tyres, and have a long second stint.
Yeah, and you know, at the end of the day, it's just however you can get the job done. If you can figure out how to win with making 10 pit stops, well, be my guest. I'd love to know how you did it. But you hear those engine driving, you hear those itchy pedal feet, the drivers watching the lights. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights in the air. No red lights. We are green for the Speed Force Racing GP2 Series Spanish Grand Prix. Jaime and Para leading him off into turn at number 1. A very good start from Jaime, but possibly a better start by Para. Very close contact into turn number 1, though. Almost wrecking, but they keep it clean. We stay green through turn 1, through turn 2. Jaime gets ahead of Para, but they are battling fiercely in the back as Cassidy finds his way into third, but then abruptly spins through turn number 3, coincidentally enough. So he finds himself all the way back in P14 now. It is Calvin back into P3 trying to hold off the Aston Martin of Ginetti.
Yeah, very. Everything pretty neat and tidy up the front. I'm not quite sure what happened with Cassidy, as we have Mansell making a go of it around the outside of the page and gets it done. I did notice at the beginning, unfortunately, at the race start at the back of the grid, the DXT Matthew had some wheel spin off the line and spun straight left across the track into Xander, right off at the start of the race, and his car got beached, and he's now been disqualified in the session as a result.
And yeah, and we just saw that unfortunately from Matty. So his day is pretty much done before it began, and Xander, who was already struggling, now has to spend the rest of his race playing catch up.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate. I'm just in time. He also had an incident and spun out as well. I'm not sure if that was coincided with his incident with Cassidy.
Meanwhile, we see Ginetti go underneath of Calvin for third. Something actually happened to Calvin there. It looked like maybe the car got a little bit loose and he had to correct it, and then Ginetti just saw the opportunity and made the move.
Yeah, Ginetti is very proactive. He likes to get through the field as quick as he can. He doesn't like to be patient.
So Dye has caught these two drivers now, and KXI just behind him in the Red Bull. We're starting to form a DRS train. All these drivers just forming a nice single file line behind the Haas of Calvin as Ginetti is pretty much checked out and pulling away, starting to flirt with leaving Calvin without DRS.
Yeah, I was just thinking that as things begin to settle down now, having a look at how things are playing out, it does look like the front two maybe have a bit more pace on the rest of the field. Perra doing everything he can to try and stay in the DRS of Jaime ahead.
So you see Calvin pretty much defending for his life in turn number 1, and Perra, now it's lap 3 of 33, so we are going to be seeing some DRS moves through the field. And Perra, he's going to hope to be one of them. You see that he's closing that gap, but he can't quite stay under a second.
What's interesting, Tim, you know, we don't discuss DRS levels or telemetries on the stream, but one thing that is very obvious is that if you look at Jaime, his red light is already flashing compared to Perra, who's not flashing, and Perra is within the DRS now. Has Jaime went off far too quick trying to break the DRS?
You know, that is a very good observation, Martin, and I think you are correct about that. Is, you know, Jaime, and it's understandable why he would do so. You know, just trying to get away from Perra and try to get, you know, a second or more ahead of him and stay there. So, you know, you do have to use a lot of VRS. You have to use your battery up, and you know, like you said, that red light flashing means that his battery is pretty much, you know, very, very, very low.
And as you say, P3 now down to P9 or P8, we do have that DRS train. So the battle for the podium is definitely there.
Yeah, just looking out the back of Janetti, you could see the line of cars just entering turn 1 and 2. Now they're going through 3 and into turn 4. And Calvin really finding a little bit of speed there. So that, you see that it seems that though Calvin does not have the straight line speed that he needs, but he does have the low corner speed, and that he can really gain on the driver ahead on corner entry.
Yeah, I think when you're in this is the difficulty. Calvin will be going through the tactics in his head right now. He'll be thinking, do I really want to pass Janetti? Because there is nothing to gain for him ahead. If he passes Janetti right now, then what most likely is going to happen is he's going to have to think about defending to Janetti again. And Janetti will be sitting in the DRS. So Calvin might be debating in his head about whether he wants to overtake. The thing that Calvin has to be wary of is he's got a bunch of drivers behind who might not be keen on sitting behind.
Yeah, because Calvin, it's easy for Calvin to lay back behind Janetti and stay there, because theoretically speaking, he knows that he can make the move, or that he'll at least have the opportunity to do so when he's ready. But if you're Dye or KXI back there, there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to pass 2 cars going into turn 1 with the DRS, because that's very difficult to do. So you don't care what the driver ahead of you is doing and what he's trying to do. You want to be in that position to make the move.
Yeah, and Cabrinicon has had an issue in the first sector. Going through turn 3, he spun out. So it's like I was saying, that is an indication to me that Cabrinicon is already struggling with his front tyre temperatures on these soft tyres. As you rightly pointed out, Tim, do not last very long.
Yeah, only 4 laps. If that is the case, and then he is struggling with tires already, only 4 laps. That is, a very quick. Oh, and he spins out again. So, regardless of if he's struggling with tire wear, well, he's definitely struggling with it now.
Yeah, he seems to be struggling with temperature.
And I'd love to know, what is it that makes these soft tires not as viable as they used to be? I mean, I know that we have a new car, so I would assume that's the most logical reasoning, but maybe there's something else that I'm missing.
I think the soft tires aren't very... In real life, in the F1, they're not really a fan of the soft tyre either, are they? They don't really use it often. They did go down a tyre grade, I think, for the new season. Effectively meaning that the medium tyre is now what would have been last season's soft tyre. And the hard tyre is last year's medium tyre, I believe.
So are you saying that the soft compound this season is, well, for lack of better words, I guess, a softer compound, lasting,
Yeah, I guess you would say the super soft version.
That's exactly where I was going with it, Martin.
Yeah. And as everybody knows, when super softs were in F1, they were only really good for 2 laps, 3 laps. They were only really used in qualifying.
So this was a few years before I started watching Formula One, but all the same, I heard the horror stories. Bring back the ultra hards.
The ultra hards.
I think they were called the ultra hards, right?
I don't remember them ever being called that. But, I know we had the super softs, the softs, the mediums, and the hards. Oh, we have a Ferrari round. Prix.
All right, well, Dye has pretty much saved me, because it seems as though I'm remembering something that didn't happen. But Dye, unfortunately, has spun around, finds himself in P10, and something happened to MDJ, so now he is retired. Oh, and now Mercedes is off. I'm just in time off the track.
Yeah, it looks like, there's some people out here struggling. And, you got to ask yourself, are these guys got their tyres at the right temperatures for the race?
And it's really weird just to see all these cars suddenly just start sliding and spinning off the track. That's normally when I would theorize, is there oil on the track? But it doesn't work that way. Not in F1 2022.
No, but I think a lot of people would agree that the traction model is very unstable in this year's game. And look how close it is between Gingy, Calvin and KXI, with Rage Hunter in behind now coming up to the group.
Yeah, this is the
Four-way
prime
battle for P3.
Yeah, this is the prime battle on track at the moment. Jaime and Para have checked out away from the rest of the field in no battle for the top 2 spots at the moment. Gingy, though, has pretty much decided that he wants to be the conductor of this very long DRS train. Calvin, KXI, Rage Hunter, Mansell almost in contention as well.
Yeah, and I think you called it earlier on when you were saying about the straight line speed. I think Calvin is maybe struggling a little bit to get by Gingy. I don't think that he's able to actually get ahead of him on the straight.
We're trying to board
He seems to have more speed throughout, like the middle sector. He seems to be quicker than Gingy, but he just can't get him on the straight.
Yeah, because you can see how much he gains on the corner entry. Granted, Calvin also had DRS when Gingy did not. But Gingy, he's able to get off the corners a little bit better.
Yeah. That's the most important thing, that this corner here coming through on exit, as long as he gets it right, and Calvin's going for the undercut.
Oh, it's a safety car. So possibly a well-timed safety car for Calvin. He certainly took advantage of it.
Caprinicon that caused that, then Caprinicon had an issue. He is now out.
So 4 drivers already out of this race on lap 9 of 33. We have our first safety car of the race, and I kind of feel like
soft. Calvin's gone the soft tire.
I think Calvin might have just killed his race.
Unless he is predicting there's going to be another safety car.
Well, that actually would be a good prediction this season. In both leagues that I commentate for, it just seems as though the safety cars have been in full swing.
Yeah. It's just coming out in 3 or 4 occasions in some instances.
So
but what it does do is it brings people like Xander back into the race who, through no fault of his own, found himself way off the back of the grid.
Yeah, it really does, and he can pit for whatever tire compound that he wants, and it doesn't matter. He's not going to lose any spots, and he's not in jeopardy of going a lap down. So it's essentially a big break for him. And you see Jaime, Para, Gingy making their pit stops now. The Slayer is staying out, but Jaime, Para, and Gingy, they are going to stay ahead of Calvin. He was 20 seconds or so back, actually 26 by the screen right now. So,
Yeah, and, this is the risk that we were talking about, what strategy to go with. The Slayer obviously went with the reverse strategy, and I've got to say, if there's no safety car that's going to be coming later on in the race, that Slayer is effectively a lap down now, and it goes against them. So Slayer will definitely be hoping that there's a safety car later in the race.
Now, nine laps on the hard tire versus everyone behind you having, 0 laps at the moment. We know the hard tire obviously is going to last the longest, and 9 laps isn't that much, but just how different is it going to be time-wise versus the Slayer on 9-lap old hards versus fresh hards?
I don't think there'll be a massive pace advantage in the race in terms of lap time once the tyres are up to temperature, but I do think that Jaime and Para will have a massive advantage in the first lap. Worn tyres seem to take a little bit longer to get up to speed in the game than the new tyres. So I think Jaime and Para will be on the back of the Slayer very quick. But the Slayer's a seasoned veteran, he knows what he's doing. If he puts his car in the right places, he can hold the place.
So you're saying it would behoove him to get the temperature in the tires quickly and get out of Dodge?
Yeah, pretty much. If Slayer needs to pick the best moment to go as well. What he doesn't want to be doing is going before the final corner, because traction out of the final corner is going to be extremely difficult. I do predict that we might see some people having issues coming out the final corner. It's always the same at this track.
And the safety car really it forced Slayer's hand to where he had no choice but to stay out because of what you said, him choosing the strategy that he did. It pretty much relied on the race staying green the whole time. So, because he could not pit for the medium tires, because you'd be hard-pressed to make the medium tires last the end of the race and still remain competitive. So, the Slayer just being forced to stay on the hard tires until he can make a pit stop. However, this does make it easier if he wanted to for him to go on the softs for his final stint. Now, we have seen that the softs don't really give you as much of an advantage as you would imagine so, but if that's what he wants to do, this has made it a little bit easier because this is giving those tires a little bit of time to cool down and not put as much wear on them.
Absolutely. The longer the safety car stays out, the better it is for the Slayer, as you say. It gives him options on how long he can stay out. He can, if he's wanting that safety car to come out later in the race, it means that he can extend his stint longer in the hopes of one coming and go the soft tyre, like you say. I'm just really surprised that Calvin's decided to go the soft tyre. I thought that, the position he was in, he'd just go the hard tyre and continue his battle for the podium, but he must be thinking something else. As you can see, Slayer has back right up here. Crawling through the third sector.
Theoretically, there's more grip on this racetrack than when we started this race, so maybe Calvin can find a way to make those soft tires work. We're about to find out now. Riding on board with Jime, the Slayer is the control car. He gets to go whenever he wants to, as long as it's before the start-finish line, and we are green.
Look at the gap that he's got already to people in the midfield. You can see Rage Hunter has had a moment coming out that corner. He lost 3 seconds on the field.
Meanwhile, the Slayer and Jime checking out ahead of Para. Para lagging behind about 0.7 of a second, but Jime is really forcing the issue, trying to find a way around the Slayer. The Slayer riding pretty much in the middle of the racetrack there for a minute, trying to defend, can't do anything with it, and you called it, Martin, is that the Slayer was going to have some trouble on the opening lap of this restart, and you can say that the Slayer is holding his own, but definitely a struggle to keep that Williams behind, and ultimately could not do so.
Yeah. You could see that the
and Para spun!
Para. Wow.
Well, that really does help the Slayer. Does not help Para, needless to say. Janeji finds himself into P3, Calvin P4, and you were talking about the gap that Calvin put on the rest of the midfield. Well, that is 1.4 seconds between Calvin and KXI, and we haven't even completed the first lap since coming back green.
Yeah, and he's all over the back of Janeji right now. The thing that Calvin's now got to deal with is, does he have a straight line to get by Janeji? That's the question.
So the soft tires will help a little bit, but how much is yet to be seen. He is gaining on him. He does not have the benefit of DRS yet, so he only has slipstream and pace, and you see him actually losing now.
Yeah, Janeji was actually pulling time on him there, so
Calvin got a better exit out of the final corner, but then Janeji was able to find some more straight line speed. So could Janeji have been using the battery, or do you just think that Calvin is lagging that much with straight line speed?
Yeah, I think that Janeji has just got the better straight line. I can tell that Calvin is definitely quicker through the lap, but when you get to the straight, he's just not got the top end speed to do the overtake.
So Jime now 1.4 seconds ahead of the Slayer. Janeji right on the back of the Slayer. So now should theoretically be the Slayer finding a little bit more time, finally getting heat in those tires, and with the difference in tire wear being not so much, just about 9 laps or so, the Slayer should be able to fall back in line, but shame for him that he did lose out to first place, but Jime has been so quick.
I don't see Jineji being prepared to sit behind the Slayer. I think he will be trying to get by him as quick as he can. And sort of create that gap between him and Calvin.
You saw the Slayer go down to the inside, try to break the slipstream from Jineji. The thing is, though, Jineji, he is catching him. It's just a matter of actually making that overtake. And of course, you got Calvin back there that, you know, he finds a car, and it's been Jineji the whole race. He sticks behind them. He's pretty much being drugged along, but he is not able to overtake.
Yeah, DRS has only enabled this lap, so we'll see what happens when they go down the start-finish straight again. Whether Jineji is able to do anything. As we see, Interesting Time is struggling. He's spun a few times now at the back of the field. But yeah, I think this is the moment where Jineji will try and seize the opportunity to get by the Slayer.
Oh, and Calvin really close to the back of Jineji that time.
Jineji had an issue there.
So you can really see, though, that the soft tires help Calvin tremendously when it comes to the corner exits. But again, just because his setup does not give him the required straight line speed, you see Jineji, you know, gaining on him down that front straightaway. You could really see it as we were riding on board with him, how much Jineji was really pulling it.
Yeah. So the Calvin started about 2 tenths behind them there coming out onto the straight, and then ended up 5 tenths behind them on the straight. So I think if Calvin's going to get the overtake done, he's going to have to do it through a corner.
Hey, you know, we're going to be barking up that tree all day, Martin, talking about Calvin not having the straight line speed to the point that he's going to be questioning his setups from now on. He's going to start asking the commentators what he's supposed to do. And then, when he doesn't have a good race, well, then I get to say, hey, I just commentate.
Well, the longer you play the game, I think it's becoming more and more obvious that low downforce is king in this new game. It is becoming clear that low wings seems to be the preferred option for races now, which is a little unfortunate, but that's the nature of the game. And Jineji surely now is going to have a good run at the Slayer.
Let's see if he's going to be able to do anything with it here. 0.6 of a second. Usually that is not a gap that you can overcome in one DRS zone, and it's going to be no different this time. He was able to knock off almost 0.2 of a second.
Pera with the fastest lap now, trying to bring himself back up, and Pera now is going to find himself coming across this DRS train that is happening in the middle of the field behind Rage Hunter.
Lap 16 of 33. So pretty much halfway through this race, and Jineji, as we're watching now, still trying to get by the Slayer. Jime 2.8 seconds ahead of this battle. Calvin been hanging out in P4, soft tires after that safety car restart. So we're going to be monitoring Calvin and seeing what he decides to do after he inevitably has to pit. And then, of course, KXI finally joining the mix.
Jime obviously now found himself 3 seconds ahead of the field, so he's in a very comfortable position right now. I think he'll be happy if the race just pans out now with no safety cars, no issues. He can just manage everything now till the end of the race. But we do have battles happening all over the track at the moment, and it looks like Pera has had another spin.
So Pera really struggling, and you know that really has been the definition of Pera's season, is that he has some strong runs. You see him put good qualifying performances down, and sometimes he can even put a good race performance down, but he's either running very well in the race or he's making mistakes. It seems like there's just no middle ground.
Yeah, that's right. well. Now, Slayer is doing a terrific job out there, and I think Jaime has had an incident as well, because he was 3 seconds ahead of the field in the short 2.3. I think he's at the moment somewhere on the track.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and see if we can take a look at Jaime.
But yeah, Slayer doing a massive job on these tyres right now. Been able to keep these people behind them.
So not seeing any damage on Jaime's car, so it looks like whatever moment he had, maybe it was just him going wide or a half spin, but you are right,
Yeah.
The gap has came down a little bit. Meanwhile, the Slayer, you see him dancing around back there, trying to keep those cars behind, does a good job going into turn 1.
We'll see how long can Calvin keep going in these soft tyres. 9-lap old, I think, what was it, 2 laps of those was behind the safety car, so I do think
he might not have to.
Decision.
Oh, never mind,
Well,
Para.
yeah, that was in the pits, so...
And for a moment...
Be coming decision time for him soon.
Yeah, and you know, for a moment you think that maybe that was a safety car, and you know, Calvin, he's going to be seeing these alerts too, so he's going to see that there's a yellow flag in Sector 3, and for a minute he's probably thinking, hey, is that a safety car? Then of course he gets his hopes dashed and realizes it's not.
Yeah.
But you know, Calvin being able to make these tires last as long as he has, you know, obviously being stuck in this DRS train, it is going to help your tire life a little bit. You know, because you're not going to have as much downforce going down the straightaway, so it's not going to have as much wear on the tires through that section. But overall, you know, Calvin, very surprised to see him maintain this pace all the same.
I'll tell you what I was actually looking at there, Tim. You know, you've got these 4 cars that are all on this DRS train, and I was looking at KXI, who's at the back of this little mini DRS train. Just kind of, what was Calvin's going, had a moment there, KXI has a run on him. But KXI is just kind of minding his own business at the back of this DRS train and kind of waiting for a moment to sort of ambush these guys. He's definitely in with a shout of the podium today.
And you know, that's really how you have to run these races sometimes. Is you know, we're not racing for the lead in this particular battle, but let's say that we were. If KXI and Calvin are racing for the lead, KXI does not have to lead any lap in this race except the last one to win. So he doesn't have to be in front of him until you cross that line on the last lap. And the way that these races work with the DRS, you know, sometimes it's better to stay behind your competitor until you can use the DRS at the right moment. It's kind of like going over to the NASCAR world, and when you watch them race on a super speedway, a lot of times you'll see a driver actually hang back coming out of turn 2 and down the back straightaway so that they can build up a run with the slipstream and then maybe overtake the driver coming out of 4 coming to the line.
And that's generally seems to be a sign of people that have been playing the game a lot more. Your seasoned racers, they have that patience and are able to understand that. Whereas, you know, you maybe have some drivers that are a little bit inexperienced that will come out and just immediately try and overtake everybody no matter what the circumstances. So, as you see now, Calvin's obviously decided that the soft tyres are not working anymore. And he's pitted for the fresh hards, and KXI now finds himself up into P4 as the Ferrari has had an issue somewhere on track.
And you know, it's also a good point that you bring up, Martin, that you know, experience versus a newer driver, to where newer drivers may not have that patience, and it's all about a balance, though, right? Because it's all about knowing when you need to be aggressive and when you need to be patient. Sometimes maybe you do need to outbrake the driver going into turn 1. Other times maybe you need to be a little bit patient and just fall back in line and follow them through for a little bit.
Exactly. So, you know, an example would be KXI is quite happy where he is right now. He'll know that the Slayer ahead has to pit, and he knows when that happens, he's going to be behind Gennady, and Gennady will not have DRS. And he will be in a good position to compete for the P2. But if Mansell was to start closing that gap down, which is possible, the longer that the Slayer stays out, then he might be forced to try and take things a little bit more aggressively and try and get himself ahead.
Yeah, but at the moment, just waiting to see how long the Slayer is going to make these hard tires last. I mean, theoretically speaking, the hard tires should be able to last to the end of the race, but obviously the rules don't allow you to do that. So he's going to have to pit, but at this point he has no choice. He probably is just waiting for a safety car.
Most likely, yeah. And you know, one of the things he's going to be debating in his head is he has to think about Calvin. Because Calvin obviously was right behind him in the soft tyre. He's now pitted and come out in the fresh hards. He's going to be lapping quicker than the Slayer. How long does the Slayer want to stay out? Because he's going to have to come back at Calvin and try and get past him again.
We saw Calvin make those soft tires last about 9 to 10 laps. As Gennady has a go on the Slayer into turn number 1. No contact. They keep it clean, but the Slayer almost lost the position, and he's still not out of harm's way. Gennady trying to find a way around this Alfa Romeo driver side by side, and does he get the move done? Yes, he does, but does he clear him? The Slayer will not let him go easily, not without a fight. The Slayer going to have the preferred line into this next corner, and the Slayer is able to get the position back, but he overdrives. He overdrives, and Gennady tries to do a crossover, cannot get the job done. The Slayer somehow stays ahead.
Yeah, fantastic wheel-to-wheel from both guys there. KXI sitting in behind, hoping for a mistake from one of them.
It's not happening yet. Key word, though, is yet, but that was fantastic racing. That is the kind of racing that I like to see. Both drivers giving each other plenty of room, but also making sure that they're trying to overtake all the same.
Yeah, I think that's an indication of where the Slayer's at now with his tyres. I would not be surprised if we see him pit this lap or the next lap.
And
Gennady
should
already passed him. That's how much the Slayer is now struggling.
And it's almost like the tires just literally fell off a cliff, isn't it, Martin? It's like the Slayer had pace and then he didn't.
Yeah, you can see he's struggling in the important traction zones now. And he's got KXI behind to deal with.
And this is not helping KXI's case at all, because you were saying that he was content riding behind Gennady, waiting for the Slayer to pit. But that was before Gennady got ahead of the Slayer, so now this is just holding up KXI's momentum.
Yeah, this is where KXI will now be pushing. He needs to get ahead of the Slayer. He can't allow Gennady to go on and build a gap now. And as you see, with all that fighting that's happened, Mansell has now closed up to the back of KXI.
Looking at the back of KXI, you can just see Mansell come into the picture. So a P4 not out of the question. Honestly, a podium not out of the question for Mansell yet.
Yeah. Cassidy and Rage Hunt are having a bit of side-by-side there.
Lap 24 of 33, Jime still your leader. Gennady in P2, 7 seconds separating Jime and Gennady. Looks like Gennady is nibbling away at that gap, but likely not enough to catch Jime without a safety car.
Looks like KXI has got the move done. He has passed the Slayer, so he's minimised that damage that he was losing time to Gennady.
Yeah, now KXI just needs to make up 1.3 seconds to get back to Gennady, and that's going to be easier said than done. One thing that we've saw with Gennady is that if he is alone on track, and no drivers, no traffic to deal with, he does have some decent pace. Maybe it's not always race-winning pace, but it is fast.
Well, you were talking earlier about Pera before he DNF'd, how he fantastic qualifying pace and has fantastic race pace, but he has the bad luck. Gennady is pretty much the same. He's always got fantastic pace in the qualifying and in the race, but sometimes he has that bit of bad luck where he maybe have a bit of contact or he'll spin And if he's able to sort of get that side of things under control, he would definitely be up there fighting for the podiums every week. Oh,
Oh my goodness! Yes, the Slayer has made his pit stop as KXI spins simultaneously. So now Mansell finds himself quite comfortably in the third position at the moment.
Wow.
I would love to know what happened to KXI, though. I'm assuming that he just lost the rear coming out of the final corner and spun around.
Oh, I think it was on the Kerbin, yeah. He went onto the Kerbin and just lost it into the right-hand side wall. And you see the Slayer has come out right behind Calvin now. And he's on the fresh soft. So Calvin's going to have some job on him to keep the Slayer behind now.
And you know, it's funny that you mentioned that the Kerbin might have made him lose grip, because it really depends on what racetrack as far as whether or not that's going to happen, doesn't it? Because I found that in my experience at Monza through Parabolica, you can actually get your left sides into that what I like to call the green stuff, and
right.
You can find some grip. Granted, I think there is a little bit of a gully on Parabolica.
The drivers actually do that in real life. They virtually have most of the car over onto the green sort of turf. Cut on the exit of Parabolica.
So now Cassidy going out of the final corner. This is where we saw KXI spin. So you can kind of piece together what might have happened. Maybe he went a little bit too wide and got some wheel spin off of the curb. All the same, though, it was unfortunate because KXI, a potential podium, is out the window.
Yeah. Cassidy showed some speed. He just got the fastest lap there, and he's opened up a gap to Rage Hunter behind, so he seems to have good pace in the car.
Yeah, and of course Cassidy got a surprise win quite a few weeks ago, and otherwise has had some decent results, but still looking for every podium that he can, and running P4 at the moment, so podium might not happen for him today, but still a strong result. The podium at the moment, though, is Jaime, Gineji, and Mansell, and sadly there's no battle between either three of those drivers. They're all just running their own race and trying to get to the end of this thing, but Rage Hunter has, or was, close to Cassidy, but has now lost some ground. There you see him on your screen in P5. Of course, Dai in the Ferrari back there in P6. KXI after spinning in P7, and there goes Calvin around KXI. So make that P9 for KXI as he loses two positions.
Yeah,
the Slayer going by him.
KXI has damage, I think, Tim. He's struggling around the track at the moment. We might see him pitting and going for fastest lap in a minute with the soft tire. He cannot corner. I think he has damage. Might be rear wing, it might be front, but definitely you actually see he does have front wing damage, and he's pitting.
Meanwhile, Slayer's going to have a go on Calvin.
This KXI has went into the wall in the entry to the pits.
Well, it looks like it's not going to be a safety car. It looks like the car is rolling again. And meanwhile, you saw the Slayer was able to get by Calvin going into turn number 1. So those soft tires paying dividends for the Alfa Romeo driver.
Yep.
And now Dai trying to defend, but it's going to likely be to no avail as the Slayer around the outside of the Ferrari does have his work cut out for him, but it's more of a matter of when, not if. But there is some contact between those two drivers, so side by side up the hill, one of these drivers is going to have to give. The Slayer making contact once again with Dai, but now the Slayer has finally got the move done. Dai will have the benefit of DRS, but it's going to be all for naught. Those soft tires just way too quick.
Yeah. I think if Dai wants to stay ahead of the Slayer, he's going to have to get him back on the straight again, or we'll see the Slayer going off into the distance.
And this is the kind of performance that you do expect from a driver on the soft tires. Granted, it is helping him that most of the drivers he's running around do have nearly 20 laps on their hard compound tires. All the same, the Slayer seems to have found at least a little something with the soft tires that Calvin could not.
Yeah. The thing was that Calvin was stuck in the DRS train, which is never ideal. you know, being stuck in the DRS train, you don't really get the benefit of the tyre. You know, I already know Calvin will be massively kicking himself right now for choosing to go in the soft tyre. But a part of me thinks that it might have been a glitch in the computer or a mistake that he made, rather than going in the hard tyre. But, you know, only he will know that, I guess.
Yeah, and you were mentioning that we can't blame Jeff anymore for making those mistakes, but there is still an in-game race engineer, and you know, sadly, sometimes mistakes like this will happen. We have seen it happen many times to where it has ruined drivers' races.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember. It might have been Austria where I saw someone in one of my races go into the pits and a dry race and come out with inters on. So it does happen.
You know, I would say that that's the perfect Ferrari strategy, but even they have not made that mistake yet.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Cassidy is not without hope of a podium here. He has closed the gap down to Mansell to 2.1 seconds now. And it was at 3.6 at one point, so he is chasing down this podium.
Now, if he's able to catch Mansell, the question is, will he have anything left by the time that he gets there? Because you have to theorize that Mansell, seeing the cushion that he has, is probably not pushing the tires as much as he could, whereas Cassidy, seeing the opportunity, is going to be pushing as much as he can to at least have a chance.
Absolutely. As every lap goes by, you'll see Mansell getting closer and closer to him. He'll be smelling Mansell's blood, so to speak, and he'll be pushing hard to get there. 3 laps remaining now once they cross the line. 4 laps remaining. So, as you say, half the battle is getting there, but what can they do once they've actually got there? Will they be able to get past?
And not to mention that your best overtaking opportunity around this track is going into turn number 1 because it's the longest straightaway. So you have the most time to build up that speed and get around your competitor. And, you know, the second DRS zone that we encounter here, it's by no means useless. It's not like the second DRS straight at Hungary to where it just kind of gives you a benefit. You can make a viable overtake, but it's still better to make the run into turn 1 if you can, just because it gives you more time. All the same, you don't always get the luxury of choosing when that opportunity comes. You just have to make the best of what is presented to you. And Cassidy is starting to find that opportunity presenting itself. He is slowly but surely getting within a second of Mansell, but will he have the DRS down the front straightaway is yet to be seen because that interval just keeps dancing.
Yeah, and I think the second DRS straight is useful to people who have a clear speed advantage over someone in front of them. When you're in the situation where you've got guys that are racing within a couple of tenths of each other on lap time, it's not a massive help because you don't actually get to reach the top end of the speed on the car. So, as you say, turn 1 is always going to be the best opportunity for anyone to get past someone.
Cassidy.
But, you know, Cassidy, he's really running out of time if he's going to get a podium. He has to get there and make the overtake this lap or the next.
Yeah, and otherwise he is going to have to rely on that second DRS zone, and you know that's just not going to be as much of a secure option. Now it does look like he might have the DRS through this zone this time. Oh, never mind. He spins into the wall. He would have had it, but now Cassidy out of this, or not out of the race, but out of contention for a podium, and Rage Hunter finds himself in a P4, but 4.2 seconds back is almost impossible for him to be getting a podium.
I saw it just went out onto the turbine, just pushing that little bit too hard, and he's lost his front wing.
And that really is a shame for Cassidy because he was pushing, but he was doing everything right. One little mistake, and he turns around.
Yep.
So
and just when you think you're about to see a last lap battle, it evaporates and disappears. And the Slayer will pick up another position.
So this worked out pretty well for the Slayer. He finds himself in the 5th position, so if he hangs on, he has got himself a top 5, which, you know, when we were talking about him being out there on 20-lap-old hard tires, or 22-lap-old hards when he ultimately made his pit stop, this is looking like a pretty good finish.
Yeah, I think after, you know, the way that the race has panned out, he'll be happy about being able to get home in P5, definitely. I didn't think, you know, when we saw him falling down to 4th place, I didn't envisage that he would be able to get up to P5 after his pit stop, so definitely a good result from us there.
So Jime is in the 3rd and final sector now, about to cross the line for the 2nd to final time. Last lap starting now. Jime has been very dominant. He took the pole. He has not led every single lap, but he has been in contention all the way. 8 seconds ahead of Janeji. All he has to do is keep it clean for one more lap, and he will be your winner here in Barcelona. GP2, he has ran a fantastic race, and even though he will likely be coming up one spot short, a podium is nothing to shake a stick at. And of course, Mansell, the driver that is either there or is not, and really the same can be said about a lot of drivers here in GP2, to where they either have a good performance or they don't. Mansell definitely being one of those drivers, but sometimes you could say that he got lucky to get a podium. Today, it was not luck. It was pace. Mansell found his way into P3, and he is held on with a valiant effort.
And that happens quite a lot, and people kind of forget that a big part of the game, especially this game, is keeping the car on track. That seems to be a massive skill. You know, what have we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people DNFing, and a couple of people in and out of the pits for not being able to keep the car on the track. So, you know, not overextending yourself and being able to keep the car on the track is a skill in itself this year. So, Jime, though, has looked in complete control from the beginning of this race, and a well-deserved victory.
Jime P1, Janeji P2, and Mansell out of the final corner will finish in P3. Rage Hunter and the Slayer looks like they're going to be your top 5, so we will talk to our top 3 finishers of Jime, Janeji, and Mansell here in just a few moments. Let's see how the rest of this race plays out, but it's not looking like there's any battles on track, so what you see is what you get, save for maybe that time penalty down there of Cassidy. That's only 3 seconds, though, and unfortunate for Cassidy to lose out on that potential podium, but P8 is at least getting some points.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you've said there about Mansell and his terrific performance. I think Rage Hunter will be happy with his finish. He seemed to be a little bit off the pace today, uncharacteristically, but, you know, the same as Mansell, he was able to keep everything on track, and he's made his way up through the field. The Slayer, fantastic. I actually think Xander has had a great result in P9. You know, he was a pit stop behind at the start of the race after that unfortunate incident, and has found himself in the points.
Yeah, just like you were saying, sometimes you just have to keep the car on track, and that's exactly what Xander was able to do, despite having some issues at the start as well. And it paid off for him with a points-paying finish, but it is Jime who is the ultimate victor around here, and really coming to no surprise because of how quick he was in qualifying, the only driver to get into the 117 zeros, and sometimes you got to think maybe it's just a wonder that he didn't win by an even bigger margin. But your unofficial results, pending any steward inquiries, of course, is Jime in 1st, Janeji in 2nd, Mansell in 3rd, Rage Hunter in 4th, the Slayer in 5th, Die in 6th, Calvin in 7th, 8th is Cassidy, 9th is Xander, I'm Just in Time in 10th, 11th is KXI, Sonicock in 12th, 13th is Para, Cabrincon in 14th, MDJ in 15th, Train Game Wow in 16th, and Maddie in the 17th position. We'll talk to our top 3 finishers of Jime, Janeji, and Mansell, who I do believe are all with us now.
Yep, present.
All right, guys, so before we start, please make sure you've allowed your voices to be shared. If you don't know how to do that, go over to the party settings, click Always Allow, and let me know when you're ready.
Ready.
Yep, ready.
All right, well, we'll start with our winner, Jime. So, Jime, a very impressive performance by you today. Very quick times in qualifying, and that translated very well in the race to what is now a victory for you. So tell us, what is it about Barcelona that just agrees with you? How are you so quick around here?
I think I found a nice setup in time trial, to be fair, because I'm, yeah, just really hooking it up in the last sector. Um, it feels quite nice around there, and that's why I made the time, I think.
Were you expecting a good result going into this race, or was that just something that you hit on while practicing?
I hit on it basically at the start of the race when I saw that me and Pera were quicker than the rest, and I could match his times because he was very quick in qualifying, and I thought my race pace wasn't as good.
Well, your race pace was proven to be the quickest one today. Congratulations, Jime, on your victory.
Thank you.
And now we'll talk to Janeji in P2. So, Janeji, you had a very interesting battle early on in the race between yourself and Calvin. Martin and I were noticing that it seemed as though you had better straight line speed, while Calvin seemed to have better speed through the tighter sections of the course. So, were you struggling through the second sector?
To be honest, I was struggling most in the last sector, like in this last chicane. That was when all the time was Calvin behind me, but I had their better exit and speed on the straights because I was doing my own setup, and I choose the straight speed and not the corner speed. So that was the reason why nobody overtook me because they just couldn't on these straights. So when I just secured these corners. To be honest, sometimes I was aware that Calvin will dive inside, but now he didn't, so I'm very happy that I could be there.
Yeah, we were watching at moments in the race when um, you were in the DRS train or when you didn't have DRS, you were still pulling 2 or 3 tenths out on Calvin on the straight. When he was when you would expect him to be able to have the better straight line. So um, we were expecting a major battle, but it just couldn't get near you on the straight. Um, how frustrated were you behind the Slayer on the safety car restart? Because it ended in the end up, it did take you quite some time to eventually get past them.
Well, to be honest, at first I wasn't too frustrated to be behind him because I was just focusing on Calvin that was behind me because he was
Yeah.
on fresh soft, so I just was like, now I can't do anything stupid, just defend. And I think I've done it great. And when I had secured that nobody will overtake me from behind, I just tried on Slayer because he has done a small mistake from exit of that corner.
Mhm.
And I just tried, but it wasn't that frustrated because I was hoping that I can get that position and I wouldn't have pace for P1. That was absolutely amazing job.
Good. Congratulations, because you were in fantastic form today, Genesee.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And now Mansell in P3. Mansell, we haven't gotten to talk to you here very much this season, but today, not only are you here on the podium, you are here on pure pace. We are, well, needless to say, we are going to give you a lot of congratulations there, Mansell, because you impressed both Martin and I. So just tell us about your race and how it led you to P3.
Yeah, just mainly keeping out of trouble, really. Yeah, start of the race, there was a massive, well, 5 car battle going on for, I think it was like P3 or something like that. So I was just, staying on the back, not getting into trouble. I didn't really want to battle them. I just wanted to see how it was going on because obviously it's still early on in the race, so I didn't really want to be heavily battling early on. And then, yeah, safety car came out, and then just everyone just made mistakes, and I just kept on keeping it consistent. Really, near the end of the race, Cassidy was starting to catch me, so I pushed on a bit, and then Cassidy I think it was Cassidy. He made a mistake anyway, and then I just dropped back a bit, and then just glided it home to the finish. So, yeah, just been really consistent today. I think I've been consistent throughout the season, to be fair. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
just happy
wanted
with the
to ask
result.
you, man. So, how hard were you sweating on the final couple of laps when you saw that the Delta was closing in with Cassidy behind?
Yeah, when I saw that he finally got past Rage and he was starting to close in on me. He put the fastest lap in. I was like, I need to push here.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do quali laps every lap until he made a mistake. I was like, yes, finally I can just rest back a bit. I lifted off that lap when he made that mistake just to relax a bit. And
Because we
then,
were like, obviously, we don't discuss ERS levels on the stream, but I
yeah,
noticed that you were still sitting on like 50% ERS or something like that at the time, whereas
yeah,
Cassidy was like under 10. I mean,
yeah,
he was really like all out pushing. I think that's what caused him to go off. He was just pushing
yeah.
too hard.
I,
But
I,
one of
yeah, I
the
saw
things
him.
that, yeah, go ahead.
I saw him. He was about a second behind me by the time he caught up to me, and
Yeah,
I just knew that we ran out of ERS just on the straight. He was just losing time on the straight, and I
yeah.
was like, okay, if he's lost ERS, I'm not really going to use it.
Because that's the thing that we were discussing is even if he was able to catch up to you and get in the DRS, we were debating about whether he would even be able to get past you on the straight because what was it? If he got there, there would only have been really the one attempt that he would have had on the straight to get by you. So it looked like that you would have been able to have held him off in the straight at least anyway. But yeah, as you say, keeping it out of trouble, doing your own race, not getting too wild and trying to go for, crazy overtakes when you're in the middle or the back of a DRS chain. Me and Tim were talking about it during the stream. Do you think that that's the key to this game? Is not overextending yourself on the track and racing within, racing within yourself and choosing the moments when to push and when to not?
Yeah. Well, obviously, previous seasons I've been on the controller, and I have been battling hard. I admit, and obviously this season I've kind of changed the plan. Just keep back, do my own race, and at the moment that has been going really well this season. I've been finishing points consistently throughout the season. I think it's only one race where I DNF, which is Belgium.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all what it is really. It's just I'm just concentrating on my own race really and capitalizing on other people's mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations on the podium, buddy. I don't. I think I think me and Tim would say that you probably go down as the driver of the day, getting yourself up onto the podium, buddy. So well done.
Cheers, bud.
And with that, that is all the time that we have. But thank you to everyone who watched. Thank you to all the drivers that raced with us. And congratulations to our top 3 finishers. And until next time, good morning, good evening, good day, good night, wherever you are in the world. Have fun and goodbye.